Hello, welcome to FPL IQ, and I've just realized I am two people. I am TN and I am Planner, but I'll sort that out in a minute. Just what a start. If it's not one technical difficulty, it's another. TN, I'm looking, I'm giving myself the eyes here. Just, you've got to do better. You've got to be bigger, faster, stronger, smarter. Right. I'll sort it out in a minute when I go through the introductions. I don't want to fiddle around with it now. Just add some people in the chat. We've got FPL Mez. Welcome. I tried to sign her for my Strikers, Keepers, Losers, Weepers team, but apparently she wants to play for someone else. A little bit like someone else on FPL IQ. Hey, Bobby, how you doing, buddy? And of course, we've got us in the chat. And Shui and Swanee, the people who single-handedly run the Discord for this channel, basically, is Shui and Swanee. Really great to see you. And I know those two, especially Shui, is one of the most maverick managers I know in FPL. I'll just go a quick run through the agenda. I did post it on Twitter, but obviously if you're not caught it on there, we're going to be talking about hot topics, about Brighton players. We don't want to just be talking about... We've discussed it amongst ourselves and online. People will always say about Sterling, Maddison, Foden this week, but we do have to talk about it because it's probably the hottest topic right now about looking at those midfielders. But we're focusing as well on Brighton because this is a fixture swing. We've thought about those first 3 game weeks. Is it time to keep hold of them because they've got high ownership, or is it time to move on? Is there an issue with Arsenal and looking with Arsenal players as well? Because last season, everyone was, without a doubt, tripled up on them. Is it time to start cutting down on Arsenal players? And how can we attack the template? We'll also go through our interesting facts, and we'll be focusing on Chelsea, Forest, Brighton, Newcastle, and Arsenal, Manchester United before we go through our 4-week game week picks. And I believe next week is the first review, right? It'll be the first time we look back at our game week 1 picks. It'll be game week 5. So from next week, we'll start to be looking back at the picks that we've had, because that's what we do here. We keep receipts. We don't just sit here and tell you, oh, get Sterling this week, and then next week he does really bad. And we're like, oh, yeah, we didn't say that. No, we put our names and ideas behind it, and we'll see how it goes. And we'll finish off with captains, if there's anyone but Haaland, basically. So I'm joined by myself to my side, which is Tien, which I'll come to in a moment. I'm joined by TGFPL Lucian. I'm joined by Football Chat Box Ryan. How's everyone doing? We'll start with you, Tien, since it's also me. How you doing, Tien? I should just mime, shouldn't I? There we go. There he is. Here he is. Let's get him on. Everyone can see his beautiful... Look at this. In-house editing. Lucian, how are you doing? You're everywhere this week. Oh, you're all over the streams. And Ryan, you've fresh off your own stream. You've got all the knowledge in your head that you're going to come and share with us, your fellow FPL IQ people. You feeling all right? I'm terribly worried that no one's heard any of this introduction again.
Oh no. Oh no, it's muted.
Not anymore. We can hear you. We can hear you. You guys, you should have heard some of the language these people are using. Absolutely outrageous. I had to mute them. The language Tien was saying was absolutely disgusting. I just cannot believe it. I had to mute it unless we'd have been banned. And some of the opinions Lucy had just then were so strong. He was suggesting to sell Haaland. He was saying Sterling is just one game week pony. Like, I had to mute them, guys, for the sake of our own channel. I do understand. I understand the mistake that I made, though. It's because I turned our voices off for the introduction screen and didn't turn it back on when I changed it. So
it's fine. You're trying to prevent us from getting cancelled on the internet. So
yeah. So
it's the content that. It's the content that you're here for.
Yeah,
professional
live
editing.
So people wouldn't have had a clue what was going on because all the time about us laughing about like Tien's picture not being there, it was just me talking to myself, which is even worse because it was just literally me talking to myself and visually talking to myself where Tien was. So no one's got a clue what's going on. So we'll just pretend none of that's happened and we're going to go straight into Brighton players. Now, I have titled this Selling Brighton Players because there is sort of a set group of players that most of us have got and are more unwilling to sell or who we want to bring in. So this is the idea that we are looking at the likes of Sterling and Maddison. And when you guys are going to chat about your opinions on this, but the players to sell, in my opinion, and you guys will agree or disagree, is it time to sell our Brighton players? Maybe not defensively, but in terms of attack, it could be a possibility. And where do we go? Because a big question for most people this game week is which midfielder is the one that I'm going to bring in, likely for a Brighton player, or some people are going to do maybe Rashford or Bruno, one of the two. I would recommend against that. I did a Twitter post about why people shouldn't be looking to sell, especially Marcus Rashford, or maybe Bowen for a game week against Luton. So let's have a look at some of the midfielders and the ones to sell. So I'll just go through what I posted about my ideas about selling Brighton players. I personally have Matoma. And he'll be going this game week. He's a great player, but always remember as well, it is a huge risk because he is 42.4% owned. But when we do talk about attacking the template, and we did talk about it last week about how to attack, not just recklessly because he's got a high ownership, but do you think you can find someone that beats that player? And a lot of people have got the idea that it's Maddison or Sterling. And I believe myself, it's probably between those two. After the West Ham game, I said West Ham, Emerson was destroyed by Sterling, and then Sterling went on and he destroyed Luton with that monster haul that Tien sat there and enjoyed very nicely. Was it 19 points? I think it was, Tien. Is that right?
Yep, 19.
A 19-pointer, very much deserved. Could have even potentially been more. It wasn't a lucky. It didn't feel like it was a lucky 19-pointer. You know, you can get some situations where, yeah, they got 2 goals, but one of the goals were a bit lucky. It was a very much deserved 19 points. But I am thinking I'm leaning towards Maddison. Chelsea have an incredible stretch of like 5 fixtures. They're very good fixtures. I'm going towards Maddison because within the first 2, you got Burnley, Sheffield United. I feel if you need to wait another week to replace another midfielder, Sterling can wait one more week. And Sterling, I see as the more explosive player who can go and get 19 points. But Maddison is just someone for me who is just constantly going to get you a good amount of points and occasionally explode as well. And I also feel as well that we've seen Chelsea being contained. When we talk about the Chelsea and the Forest game later, I do feel like a 5-back is Forest, 3-backs, 5-back kind of situation. I do feel as though Chelsea are a team that can be contained. West Ham contained with 10 men, right? And we can't. I'm not trying to bully Luton, but it was Luton and it was one game. And I personally think he's a fantastic option. I pointed him out in that game against Chelsea. I pointed him out even more in the West Ham game. But I'm not still quite there yet with going Jackson and Sterling because I feel like they can contain him. I shared a shot heat map of Sterling in our group chat. And like all of his shots come from the edge of the 6-yard box, from like one place. right? But Maddison is everywhere. And I use Fantasy Football Scout for my like stats that I pay for. And I was really surprised when it was 67% in Maddison's favor. I didn't really think it was that close. But then when I look back at, I know he got a few points in the first couple of game weeks, but Chelsea still aren't quite right. And I still think as an attacking side, because I'm not thinking about the defense. I don't care if they concede goals because I'm looking at their attackers. As an attacking side, I think Spurs are more difficult to contain than Chelsea. I feel as though that there's more a route to points and possibilities for Maddison than there is for Sterling. So Maddison's shot map and heat map is more varied. It's usually more central, which is better for striking. The immediate fixtures are better for Maddison as well, with Burnley and Sheffield United. I just love what Big Angie's doing with Spurs. And I've also got Jackson, and a lot of people jumped onto Jackson. I've had him since game week 1, and I just feel the double up is putting everything into Chelsea. Chilwell, Sterling, and Jackson. So again, we're not just looking at one player. We're not just looking at Sterling, period. We're looking at our FPL team as a whole. And if Chelsea go out there and they have that, toothless attack situation, or they do get contained, you've got 3 players from that team. And I've got nothing I don't have Udogie, I don't have Richarlison, I don't have Son, I don't have Kulusevski. I have no one from Spurs going into these games. And I think that they're going to do well. I love how Big Ange has got Spurs playing. And Maddison is the absolute talisman. He is it. He is the man for that team. Sterling is great, but I don't feel like every single thing is going to go through Sterling. But Maddison, set pieces, potentially penalties, free kicks, he's everything to that side. And I just think that if I compare it to Foden, Sterling is more explosive than Foden. Maddison is more consistent than Foden. And for 7+ million, I don't want to sit there every week and just be like, oh, is Foden going to play? Sick or not sick? They've got De Bruyne, Doku. Alvarez is always there. Kevin De Bruyne will end up making a faster recovery. Whatever. I'm not doing that every week. So for me personally, I think Brighton is a sell in terms of attack and defense. I have Steele as my goalkeeper. I don't have Estupinian. I would probably keep him, but if you are looking to sell one of your players, and Matoma being sort of like 40+% owned, almost most people have got him. I would personally be looking to sell him for Maddison. I think would be the one that I'm going for. So that's my piece. Yes, I would be selling Brighton and João Pedro, and they've got Fati coming in on loan from Barcelona, right? So João Pedro's just sat on my bench chilling out anyway. But if you've got him, you've got another player in there. Pedro's a sell because Ferguson plays and he's still not getting into the starting 11. So for me, he's a sell. Midfielders, if I had March, because when we talk about Newcastle, Brighton later on, if I had March, I might be more reluctant to sell. But if I have Matoma, I would be more likely to sell. Pedro is a sell, and Estupinian, I don't have him, but if I did, I wouldn't be looking at a clean sheet. So that's what I'm feeling about Brighton assets right now, and particularly the chat about which midfielder to bring in. So, Yen, we'll jump over to you. How are you feeling about the Brighton players or other midfielders to go to?
So I think I'm gonna keep it short. I'm a big fan of playing the fixtures, and you can't ignore the fact that Brighton's fixtures have changed for the worse. So they started out with 3 very easy fixtures. We expected them to do well in attack, which I think they did, and also as expected, the goals and the attacking stats were shared around. So not just one talisman like some other teams, and there were, as expected, some benching headaches as well, like João Pedro. However, we expected a little bit better from the defense. I think the defense has been pretty shaky, even with that fixture run. So I think with the next 6 fixture, which are quite difficult, I think it's time to sell as well. However, I'm not against keeping Estupiñán, for example, because he's pretty cheap. If you don't want to play, you can easily bench him or rotate with some other option, because he got a very good attacking potential as well. So especially if you got other problems in your team, I think it's perfectly fine to keep Estupiñán. With Mitoma, once again, I think it's a sell, because there's, as you say, there's so many good options in midfield that he can go to. Madison, Sterling, or Foden, or even going sideways to Diaby or Mbomo for those who don't have them. I think selling Mitoma is definitely on the card for a lot of people. But once again, if you have other fires, like myself, I have João Pedro, which I think is a more of a priority to sell. If I had Mitoma, I probably would be okay to keep him as well. But I don't, so I don't have to worry about that. So in short, I think it's a sell for any Brighton assets that you have, but not urgent sell, because they can still do well against strong team. That's my opinion.
If you really, so Pedro's in your starting lineup, right?
Yep.
Yeah, so if that's the situation, Mitoma, you could play against Man City. You could play Mitoma against anyone if you had to. He's a fantastic player. We're just looking for a player that's so highly owned that we're trying to beat everyone else with. But if you've got Pedro, he's definitely the priority. And you said about the fixtures tickers aren't everything, because form or individual or whatever can always outclass it. But Brighton, people are looking to wildcard like game week 8, game week 9. And from game week 4 to game week 8 and game week 9, Brighton are bottom of the fixture ticker in terms of difficulty. So you got to look for an advantage, and you got the likes of Chelsea, Newcastle, Spurs right at the top of the fixture ticker with the best ones. Now's the time to switch, and we all had it penciled in pre-season, right? Lucien, how are you feeling about Brighton assets and those shiny, tasty new midfielders people are interested in?
Well, I think we have to give benefit of the doubt to Brighton to ensure that they are actually fixture dependent. I mean, if Brighton's attack is fixture proof, then why sell them, right? I mean, we've got to learn a valuable lesson from my mistake last game week, where I quote Tien, "You must be mad to sell Rashford and Bruno Fernandes before Nottingham Forest at home." I think, yeah, you've got to give Brighton that one chance at least against Newcastle, especially when you're talking about Mitoma, who goes up against Trippier, right? You got to give that a chance. At least give that a chance. So yes, why sell assets that have worked for you if unless you're selling them for someone essential like Madison or Sterling or someone that everyone has. Um, so that's my opinion on Brighton attackers. I think Joao Pedro should be benched or sold if you can see an upside, because right now the problem with selling Joao Pedro is that you don't know who to buy. Watkins isn't the most attractive right now. Isak is who everyone is going for. Can't really think of anyone else top of my head
Jackson.
besides Julian Alvarez. Sorry?
Jackson.
Maybe.
I mean, you have
So
Jackson already. Yeah.
yeah,
Carlton Morris at Luton.
yeah. So I mean, yeah, sure. If you can go from Joao Pedro to Jackson, and that has been in your plans since game week 1, sure. I'm pretty sure a lot of people have been doing that anyway. So at this stage, yeah, I think the real question revolves around Estupiñán, because as Tian said, right, you can just bench him. I mean, if you were to sell a Mitoma or Joao Pedro, yes, there are moves that you can make that have pretty high upside. But if you sell an Estupiñán, who would you buy? There aren't a lot of overwhelming picks unless you're super super late to the Chilwell train. So as it stands, yeah, I mean, just keep who you have as long as they play 90 minutes. Really, the only reason you have to sell somebody is if you've got them injured for the rest of the season, like Tyron Mings or Chukwuemeka. Yeah, that's my take on Brighton players.
Yeah, for defenders, Estupiñán's one to. It's more difficult to replace. I think, and I'm pretty sure there's a lot of people out there that are already tired of making defensive transfers. I've got Varane sat on my bench. He's injured for 4 weeks. I'm not using a transfer for that. I'm well-rounded because I bench boosted anyway, but it's definitely looking at those midfielders. And I completely understand what you're saying about those that have worked for you, because Mitoma has got, I know he got 1 point in the last game, but he's got 12 points and 5 points. He will probably, if he got an assist against Newcastle or a goal, no one's going to be like, whoa, he does work for you, but it's just trying to find ways to get the advantage on everyone else, and jumping off at the right time is arguably just as important as jumping on at the right time, right? Because a lot of us jump on too early. I could arguably say I jumped on Jackson too early because I started the season with him. And now everyone's got him, and he's gone and scored a goal against Luton. But they've had 2 weeks of him doing, a Watkins or someone else, right? But that's about timing, right? And that's what the game is. Ryan, how you feeling about the midfield, like Brighton, and then thinking about other midfielders everyone's been talking about this week?
So I think when we started this series, I mentioned that fixtures are king. And I still do agree that fixtures are king, probably end of the day, because that mainly dictates form, unless you're like a Manchester City where fixtures kind of don't matter to you. Mitoma, I don't have Mitoma, but if I had, I would probably sell if you were looking to get either a Madison or Sterling, because again, go back to the fixtures, they have the really prime fixtures coming up for them. If you already have them and have Mitoma still, then I probably might lean towards a Foden as well, to be honest, over Mitoma in that specific case. So that would be like my midfield situation. Forward line, I kind of agree with Lucian in terms of I've got Joao Pedro, but I also have Jackson. And I'm going to be benching Joao Pedro this week because, one, I don't want to take a hit. The other, I think forwards haven't really stepped up to the plate. And also, I think in a couple of weeks, we might be looking at forwards stepping up to the plate if the likes of Darwin, Isak, Gabriel Jesus, once all of the fixtures slightly get better for all of them, then we might be looking at a template switch as well to a 3-striker formation. Then we can have that conversation. But for now, I think Joao Pedro can be on the bench. Estupinan, now I'm in the situation where I've got Saliba, Estupinan, 4.0 Kabore, who doesn't play, and then I've got Udogi and Chuba. So I have to kind of either play Estupinan, because I'm not going to be playing Saliba because the attacking threat isn't there from Saliba. Or I take a -4 to replace Estupinan, and I kind of don't want to do that. And even if I was to do that, the only standout options that for me look at it is like Gusto. And then I was thinking, okay, Gusto, I'm not sure when Reece James is coming back. That's a bit of a problem. So I'm like, okay, I'll just play Estupinan, get whatever comes my way, and just go to the next game week. That's basically what I'm thinking. So I think a lot of people might be in that similar situation. And then, I mean, you play him and see, because they haven't kept a clean sheet at all in the 3 games, but it's come with 2 double-digit hauls in 3 of the 2. So, I mean, what's the worst thing that could happen? 2 points, probably.
Yeah, the Gusto one's crazy because it's a 4 million gift, but it's a 4 million. It's a transfer out, right? Or it's a waste of a Chelsea spot. 581,000 transfers in. I believe it's the 3rd most popular transfer in this game week. But if he didn't get 14 points against Luton, do you think he would have had 581,000 transfers in? No. So a lot of people, we've got to be looking at that. But we wanted to touch it. We can't. So many content creators have sat there and just spent the whole week talking about Maddison, Sterling, and Foden, but we have to mention him. But we're talking about who to replace them with, and Brighton is the key one for that. When we talk about like United assets, I'm going to recommend to not replace them with those players. But I think might be time to move on from Brighton. But another team, so sticking with the idea of if we're going to be replacing them, it's looking at Arsenal, who have underwhelmed this season. And I think part of the issue has come down to the tactical side. We need to try and stay impartial, because I was someone who started the season with Saliba and Gabriel. I think Tien, you had Gabriel. Lucian, did you have Gabriel as well?
No, I started with Saliba, Kai Havertz, and Martinelli.
Oh yeah, we'll move on from that one. Ryan, did you start with Gabriel?
Nah, I started Saliba because I thought he was a better bonus point option.
I always had Saliba as well, but I doubled up because I didn't want. I wanted Saka, and I didn't want Marta was great, but I had money to go elsewhere. But yeah, I still have Saka and Saliba, and that's enough. And Saliba's going to be on my bench because I've got a nice deep bench. It would have been even better if Varane didn't get injured. Defensively, fixtures are still looking okay for Arsenal. Saka looks like he's back on pens. It's just, for me, I've got Saka as a shield. I've not got Saka in my side right now because I'm a brave boy who is wanting to go against it. When we talk about attacking the template, he was 66.5% owned. He might have gone slightly down now. He's 66.4% owned now. He's just a shield pick. If I were wildcarding right now, I probably wouldn't have any Arsenal players in my side. Or I'd just have Saka purely from a tactical shield EO pick point of view, which I think is wrong. Like, it's right and it's wrong. When Tien talks about later what he wants to say about attacking the template, it's just too much for a player that is cheap enough, and he is on penalties and they do have good fixtures. But I am completely not convinced with whatever Arteta has decided to do this season with Arsenal. Martinelli's not really done it yet because they just force everything down that right-hand side now. So Martinelli's always free, completely free on that side, but just doesn't get any of it. Ødegaard, without that random penalty he took against Crystal Palace, his stats are nowhere near what they were. Now, we did point out in pre-season, and we have discussed it before, about Ødegaard was massively overperforming his stats from last season. So maybe this is the idea of it equaling out, but he's massively dropped off. Lucian probably doesn't want to talk about Havertz, but, he's not been a particularly great pick. Gabriel, after 70-plus games in the side, gets dropped. There's potential goalkeeper rotation now with Raya there. Arteta's trying new tactics or roles or instructions, especially with the whole inverting from the right side because Zinchenko wasn't fit, but he's supposed to be back now, but they've still got Partey at right back. I think they've been really lucky to be on 7 points so far this season. They're really lucky to have that many points. I kept Rashford over Bruno in the hope that Rashford was going back to that left wing, which he has now, or he did in the last game. And here's why I'm going to say, when we're talking about selling players, who to sell, who to not, and where to go, yes, sell Brighton, but I would not be selling. I sold Bruno before in game week 2 for Diaby, which has worked out so far, and I'm happy with that. But if I was still sat there with 2 United, I knew if I didn't sell one by Forest, I wouldn't be selling them for a while, especially Rashford. Bruno was better last week. Bruno's up there in the stats, but Rashford is going to be down that right-hand side against Partey, and I just can't see them stopping him. They look unsure at the back. They look kind of one-dimensional going down that right-hand side in attack, and we've got no idea why Gabriel's just suddenly been dropped. You can't be in the team for 70-plus games and then suddenly Arteta, and they've just come runners-up. They've just had a great season. The back being like title chase inside, and suddenly Gabriel's not good enough. Timber gets injured. Gabriel's still not good enough. And then Tomiyasu gets suspended. Gabriel's still not back in the side. We've got no idea what's happening there. If there's something going on, or if it's just this tactic that Arteta is just too stubborn to change. And I don't know what it is. So if they would have gone back to the original defense of White, Saliba, Gabriel, Zinchenko, or any fit left back, they'd be back to being a solid side, and we probably wouldn't be having a problem with the defense. But as it is, they look awful. They still look good statistically at times, but they're not looking good when you actually watch the game. They've just conceded 2 goals against Fulham, with Raul Jimenez up front for 90 minutes, who scored about 5 goals in his last 60 games, and he hasn't scored since October 3rd, 2022. And you're conceding against a team, and I'm going to go in a little bit on Fulham later, who are lucky to be in the situation that they're in right now. Palace, they won 1-0 from a penalty, and then Nottingham Forest, they didn't create one big chance against Nottingham Forest. So you've got a team that looks tactically uncomfortable, new system, but same players. They've not had a huge overhaul like Chelsea with 100 new players in the doors. But you've got a team that is leaking goals at the back. They've had Palace, who are not very great in attack. I'm sat here with Etse, but they've not been great in attack. They win 1-0 from a penalty. No big chances against Nottingham Forest. And they concede 2 goals against Fulham and can't smash them at home. For me, I wouldn't have them. If you're wildcarding now, I would probably just have Saka purely for safety. But if I was brave and I'm more of a Maverick-like manager, I would suggest to have Saka, but I wouldn't. I probably wouldn't have an Arsenal player in my side. So I just feel strongly about that. So, Tien, how are you feeling about Arsenal? You think they can just change it around, or something not right, or?
Yeah, I think I agree with a lot of the things that he just said. Yeah, I have no idea what Arteta is trying to do. So we'll have to wait and see. But the key is similar to Brighton. You know, they had very easy 3 fixtures to start with, and now they're starting to get some tougher fixtures. So a lot of people have 3 to start with. I was one of the lucky one or unlucky one, depending on which perspective you're looking at, because I only have Saka and Gabriel to start with, so basically just Saka, because I've already sold Gabriel. So I think I'm in a good position to not worry too much about, because yes, Saka is perfectly fine to keep. As you said, he's a shield pick. I don't think anyone should be rushing to get rid of him. But if people are sitting on 3 Arsenal, a lot of people will be, having sitting on Saka, Martinelli, and Saliba, right? And that's very, very popular template picks. It's probably hard to see how you can justify selling Saliba at the moment. You can just bench him, right? If you don't want him to play, you could just bench him. But I think Martinelli or Odegaard for whoever own him besides Saka, I think both of them are strong sell. As he said, they didn't put a lot of house on fires or anything. I mean, they look all right. I mean, they got the Odegaard got the pen, and Martinelli sometimes look pretty attacking. But I think compared to the better midfield options that we're looking at, like Madison or Sterling or Foden, certainly there's a lot of upside to move. So, and keeping in mind that if you are sitting on 3 Arsenal and you may have 2 or 3 Man United players as well, then you potentially have 5 or 6 players in one single game, which is never ideal. So, yeah, if that's the situation that you're in, I think selling a Martinelli or an Odegaard to Madison or Sterling or Foden make a lot of sense.
Yeah, this is going to sound stupid now, because I've said that they keep just going down that right-hand side, and just by chance, Luke Shaw's injured and Varane's injured, so they're probably definitely going to attack down Manchester United's left side and Arsenal's right side. But that's not something you can't hope that the team you're going to play every week is going to get an injured left back and centre back, right? So yeah, so it's the same idea, keeping hold of Saka, but probably selling any other attacking assets. Lucian, are you feeling good about Arsenal? Feelings there?
Well, Arsenal are stuttering. I just think that because of how literally every side in the Premier League is going through their own transition right now, it's important to understand that if you sell an Arsenal attacker, you better be prepared to buy him back. I know a lot of people are going to buy Madison, Foden, Sterling, whatever, right? So it's very unlikely that you will sell Foden or Sterling to get Martinelli back if suddenly Martinelli gets a brace against Man United. So be prepared. Be prepared. I'm sure a lot of people will have their Mitomas ready, at the bank. Give me my Martinelli back. Yeah, if Martinelli does well. What we have to understand is that whoever that has said they know Arteta's plan with last season's squad that finished second is spouting nonsense. Because nobody knows what Arsenal's game plan is in the first place. So how can you even say that you know Arteta's game plan this season? Arsenal never revolved their play around a talisman. They never had multiple players establish a tactical advantage under any side. Arteta was about developing sort of average players with respect to the league and developing them into a championship winning sort of consistency that repeatedly pounded the same side over and over again. Martinelli prior to last season had potential, but when he started going on his goal scoring streak, everyone went, "Oh, hello. Finally, we see Martinelli come good," and he's only in his early 20s. Same thing with Granit Xhaka, Bukayo Saka, Martin Odegaard. These are players way before their prime, their actual prime. And now that they've reached their actual prime, Arteta has to make a decision on how Arsenal will actually win games. For City, the solution is simple: Erling Haaland. But for Arsenal, it's not. It's not. So to say that Arsenal's plan A is as obvious as day is something that is hearsay, absolute speculation, conjecture, and we need to respect that. We need to respect that Arsenal themselves are trying to remain unpredictable by having a rotating set of number nines that dictates how they play differently across different stages of the game. And in fact, the hero against Fulham when they went 2-0 down was Fabio Vieira. I mean, you come on for Kai Havertz and you have Fabio Vieira as your difference maker in a single game. It just shows that Arteta's still going through all these transitions, and when Gabriel Jesus comes back, we're going to see a new set of heroes emerge, and we just have to adapt to whoever shines for Arsenal. It's as simple as that. So that's my take on Arsenal.
There's no doubt that you can see the logic about his setup against Forest about having a better ball-playing defender than Gabriel. But sometimes it's just, if it's not working, go back to what was successful originally. And it just feels like it's still not there. Like, you admire, like you say, you can't guess. But the problem is, if you can keep everyone else guessing, but if your own players are kept guessing because they're not understanding what's going on, that's why there's such a lack of cohesion. It's like Man United with the whole not having another 6 and try to do 2 8s, and you got Bruno and Mount when Mount was fit, trying to do a role that they're not quite sure what they're supposed to be doing. Like, I don't know if Partey has ever played right back in his professional life, and they're asking him to do something that he might not have done before. That Zinchenko has done it before because he did it at Manchester City. He did it where he would come into a central midfield role like Cancelo did when he was in Pep's good books. But you're asking Partey, who is a central midfielder / central defensive midfielder, to do that inverted side, but then also go to right back, which is not his position. And you could be the world's greatest central defensive midfielder, but positions like right back and left back are one of the most underrated, undervalued positions on the pitch because you have to be a specialist in that. Like the likes of, look back in history at the likes of Gary Neville, right? He wasn't an athletic phenomenon, but you couldn't replace them easily because it's a specialized role. Like striker, I'm not dissing strikers, but it's put the ball in the back of the net, right? But in defensive situations, the side back, right back, left back are specialized. So you can't just put a great tackler or a great reader of the ball at right back. And that's what I think Arteta has done. Like Kante in his prime, one of the best ball-winning midfielders we've seen in the Premier League. You stick him at right back, doesn't mean he's going to be a good right back. And that's an issue that I have with Trent going into midfield. He's still learning that position. And when he's doing that defensive transition of that central role to get into the right back, he's still getting caught out and he's still getting done. Like Gordon had Trent all day long in that Newcastle Liverpool. So yeah, I agree. It's keeping him guessing and doing that, but I still just disagree with the players at his disposal, how he's using them. Like he's got a Ferrari and he's using it to go to the shops, right? That's how I feel. It's the same with Havertz, right? Havertz is a 9. He's dropped him too deep. You stick him up where Gabriel Jesus would be, it probably would be better. But he's having him playing a deeper role, and I don't see Kai Havertz playing that before. Like, I'm pretty sure he didn't play it in Germany, and he definitely didn't do it at Chelsea. But now he's doing it at Arsenal, and it's not working. Ryan, your thoughts on Arsenal?
Well, it seems like Arteta is trying to be like Pep, but not having the same type of players that Pep has in terms of system and everything. Because you got Declan Rice, you got Partey, start one, bench the other is what Pep would probably do. But I guess Arteta is trying to keep both of them in this lineup as well. So you play one at right back, which is not really useful. Then you got Havertz, who probably has kind of changed the way Odegaard also operates a bit. In general, with Arsenal, in terms of selling, I think Martinelli, everyone's looking to sell right now. And I agree with Lucien. Obviously, you probably might want them back. But at the same time, there's the counter argument that if Arsenal probably didn't have Everton next game week, and you look at the rest of their fixtures until like game week 9, it's not the most easiest run per se as well. It's got a set of tough fixtures in there. The one thing I'll add to this is obviously Champions League draw later today. Depending on who they get, it could be a different story where rotation starts to kick in a bit more. Now, last season, I think I stand by the fact that Arsenal did well because they were able to toss off the rest of the competitions that they were in. I don't think Arteta is going to get the same luxury that he did with regards to last season. This time, they'll expect to take the Champions League a bit more seriously. If they get tough opponents, then I can see people after game week 5 deciding whether they want to keep even a Saka as well, to be honest, because we still have a lot of good midfielders performing as well. So yeah, for now, I think you keep, but in terms of Saka, but Martinelli, I think you can kind of sell if you don't have a Maddison or Sterling, like we discussed.
And Lucy mentioned before about if you sell them, be prepared to buy them. And Ryan, you yourself said earlier about fixtures are king, and I'm a big fixtures person as well. And again, we're looking at that sort of game week 8, game week 9 time frame. We talked earlier about Brighton at bottom of the fixture ticker for that. Arsenal a third from bottom. But I always find that the issue I have with the Arsenal fixtures, it does kind of feel like why you might want to hold them, but be brave yourself to bench them, is it's like difficult game, easy game, difficult game,
that's why.
easy game,
it's
right?
Mix, yes.
Yeah, so Saliba, that's why he's a hold. You can bench him this week, play him against Everton next week, bench him for Spurs, play him against Bournemouth, bench him for City, and then it's wild card or you've got Chelsea and see how you feel about it, right? So, if you want a wild card really late, it's just we look at the sort of first 8 to 10 game weeks for that first wild card, or that's when a big fixture swing usually happens, right? If anyone wants to leave a like or subscribe if you're enjoying it, we try and do this every Thursday with this team FPL IQ. I'm really glad we all get together and do this. Maybe in the future, maybe try and do a bit more with videos and stuff. I also want to use this time because I always forget about like shout outs. So Lucien, what is it? So Lucien's area is like team matchups and game week matchup tactic reviews of specific games. Where can people find you for some things that you do by yourself?
Thanks so much for the platform, Rob. I really appreciate it. So yeah, guys, I write regularly on Twitter. I'm aiming for one long post a day. I used to do weekly threads, but I am not efficient in my new process just yet, but it will come. It will come. Right now, everything literally that I write is on a coffee page on my profile. So in order to avoid spamming the internet with older things that are outdated, I do post older reviews of matches on my coffee page. And just feel free, if you like what you see, just buy me a coffee. And yeah, it goes to the family. And that's what I do after hours or early in the morning. And this all adds and contributes to today's show, as well as my appearances on That Hall on Tuesdays.
And yeah, I always see your Twitter posts. Like he'll also do like key moments in games from both sides. So that's I find that really, really cool to have a roundup of a game. If you've only seen the highlights, but he's seen all of it, and he'll put sort of key plays, key moments, key things, which I think is really cool. Ryan is I always try and tell you, try and change your Twitter handle because it's not connected at all. It's football
I know.
chat box. But Twitter is Ryan_MS28.
Yes.
So it's not the easiest one. But I know you do Scout the Game Week. You do some stuff with Fantasy Football Scout. But is your own channel, well, any mentions you want to say?
Yeah, so I mainly do like YouTube content compared to Lucien, who does like a lot of Twitter stuff. I don't use Twitter. I use Twitter to like advertise stuff, but I don't really put threads or anything. Maybe I should. But yeah, I mainly YouTube deadline streams, and obviously try and get guests on as well on the channel. Had Mira on this week, where we're looking at like attacking or getting ahead of the template, so stuff like that, basically on YouTube, youtube.com football chatbox.
Right.
Maybe I should change my Twitter handle, but I don't know.
I always tell you to do that. I think we find you. If you look for planner, you're gonna get Tien. If you look for teacher, you're gonna get Lucy. You look for Hall, you're gonna get me. You look for Ryan_MS28. Always wish me to laugh. Tien, how about you, buddy?
Yeah, so I don't have a lot of time, so this is the only sort of video content that I do, and really enjoy talking to you guys. I've learned a lot from you, all of you as well. So it's really great because I feel like that sort of tactical side of thing, the matchups, reading the games, is my weaker side. So this is a perfect opportunity for me to learn from you guys, and reading your threads and watching your review shows with That Hole as well, right, really help. I'm obviously on Twitter, FPL Planner AU. Occasionally post some stuff, depending on whether I'm free or not. Sometimes I post a long thread, sometimes I just put like a very short tweet. So looking at transfers in, transfers out, my opinions on them, predicting EO is something that I do quite regularly. Predicting captaincies and EOs, and I think I've been doing quite well in the last 3 game weeks. I think my predictions are generally pretty spot on. So I intend to keep doing that because it doesn't take a lot of time. But yeah, that's pretty much it.
You're also a Manchester United team predictor, is that right?
Yes, I recently joined Emma, the Jump the Wave team as well. So I think there's like 30 or so of us predicting Man United lineups, and so far my record in the first 3 game weeks has been great. 11, 10, 11. So pretty proud of myself.
Yeah, so here, when I conceived the idea of FPL IQ, I picked out people with different skills and we come together. But I do want to give some time to let you guys, if individually, like, I think Tien just made a really good point about, he feels his team or player or whatever matchup review is his weaker side. So then that's when the others can jump in. If we're not too sure about effective ownership or shield picks or specific plans, Tien jumps in. So we just have different skills, but I also want to, I'm not here advertising sponsors and saying click links in descriptions and stuff like that. Not doing that. But I do want to spend some time to point you guys in the direction of the people here with me today and to watch their things. If you like us as a whole, fantastic. But if you also want to go and find us individually, I just do this and do garbage on Twitter, basically. That's what I do. I come up with occasional threads and ideas which are a bit different at times, or make a discussion. But yeah, I'm really glad that Lucien said non-tent earlier, because I'm telling you, I'm going to get that catching on in this community. I think it's a perfect description. I love. But yeah, I'm not sponsoring things, but I do want to let you guys try and find these people because they all make great work together as a team, but also individually. Definitely go and check them out because all great content, no non-tent. There you go. That should be our slogan. Great content, no non-tent. No subs, no clicks. Just maybe give us likes and subscribes, and that would be lovely. But we're going to move on to attacking the template. So Ryan, you've already said you've discussed this earlier about to do with the template. I thought it was Tien that brought this up in our chat, but you said it was Lucien who brought this up. I thought it was Tien. Was it you or was it Lucien?
Maybe all of us were thinking about it.
I wasn't thinking about it, so I'm not going to be the. I'm always thinking about it. But
I'm
You've
scrolling
been
now.
doing that for 14 years, so yes.
So
that's all right.
I'm gonna
Carry
go.
on.
I'm gonna go in order here then, because Tien, you're first on our documents here. So this part of the show is we're talking about the template, the 57 club, as we'll call it, because we don't want to get sued. That was Lucian's suggestion before the stream. The 56 club is it's just the idea that a lot of content creators. I posted myself on Twitter 4 popular FPL content creators, and they had 41 out of 44 of the same players. They pretty much get the same game week, similar advice. I'm not dissing them. They come up with some great content, but it's the template. And now is the time. We've got 4. Game week 4. Is there a time to attack it? When is there a good time to attack it? Not necessarily who to attack it with, but when is it right to attack? Is it right to attack? How can we attack? Basically, how can we be better? So, Tien, how can we attack the game template?
Yeah, so I think you've got to put it out there first that the template itself isn't good or it isn't bad. It's just something that happens naturally in the game, and it really depends on your play style. So for myself, I don't believe the best way to play FPL is to go rogue and pick a very differential team, especially for game week 1. I believe that a balanced approach is what I find generally works well. So, for example, at the start of season, you may pick 6, 7, or 8 template picks that you generally agree with, or you don't have a strong objection to, and then you play around with 3 or 4 picks in your starting 11 that you have strong doubts about why they're being in the template, for example. So that's when you start the season, there's a lot of unknowns. So I think that's kind of a balanced way to start. And then I think the best way to keep attacking the template is to be the template, to lead the template, i.e. you're trying to get ahead of the template. So the way you do that is to get players that you think will become the template, but you get in like maybe 1 or 2 weeks earlier than most people. And then you're getting rid of the template players that you don't believe in. Once again, try to be like 1 or 2 weeks ahead, not too far ahead, but just 1 or 2 weeks ahead. And you don't have to go like crazily differential either. Just focus on identifying 1 or 2 players at a time that you think will do well. For example, when they show early forms that people haven't picked up on, or they are about to have a great run of fixture, because fixtures is king. But at the same time, try to focus on fixing the problems in your team. So, you got injuries, or you got players out of form, or players losing their starting place, like João Pedro or Gabriel, for example. They are problems in the team. I think you should be focusing on that team first. And I've got a 14-year-old son who started playing FPL recently, right? And he always asks me every week, I say, oh, who should I buy? And the first question I ask him is, who do you want to sell? Who's your problem player? Because that is where you start, and then you can identify the best option for that to replace that player. Now, obviously, attacking the template and trying to get ahead can be done with either very careful planning of free transfers, and by not wasting free transfers on unnecessary transfers, because that will help you avoid hits. Obviously, sometimes taking hits may work. It can work if you identify great opportunities. But generally, I believe that if you careful with your free transfers and your planning, then you don't need to take hits very often. Now, sometimes your team just happen to be in a mess because you've chosen the wrong players, or a lot of unexpected injuries happen. Then you play the wild card. There's no problem.
Havertz.
But you can easily fix it with the wildcard. But wildcard is the most powerful chip, right? So you don't want to use it lightly. So I'll just give a quick example. So 2 seasons ago, I I wildcarded, I think, in game week 8 or 9, I can't remember. And I got onto James ahead of a very good fixture run on my wildcard. Now, in that very week, he only got me 1 point. And a lot of people were doubting James at the time. I think he might have been coming back from injuries or something at the time. So not a lot of people got onto James. I got onto him, got my, the 1 pointer in the first game week. It's like, oh my God, that's, it's just a disaster. But then he went on a run of 4 game weeks, returning me a monster haul of 53 points. And obviously what happened is, everyone was trying to get into James. But they were already like 2 or 3 games behind me. And then by the time that everyone got onto James, he started returning those 1-0, 1-0, 1-0. Everyone remember that, right? It's got like a long. So, and it's just that simple. Like, sometimes you're lucky and sometimes you're not. But that is the key. You just get on to someone that you think will be a good template pick 1 or 2 weeks ahead. And Sterling is another example that I got onto him last week. It's just because I had this gut feeling. I watched him play against West Ham, and Luton is a perfect fixture. A lot of people was doubting him, so I thought, well, that's a perfect opportunity for me to get onto him. And now a lot of people are trying to get onto him. So that it's just, I wasn't picking Sterling from game week 1, right? That is too early. But just get on to the right time. For me is the key. And some people who have Madison, for example, already, I think they're in a very good place because Madison is become the new template pick as well. So if you have Sterling, Madison, Foden, if you got 2 or out of 3, you'll be well ahead of those who still have like double United or double Arsenal attacks or who are still heavy on Brighton, for example, and that's how you get ahead of the template.
And you could even be a wild card ahead, or many points hits ahead, if you've made those moves early on. I think just to summarize a couple of key points that I think are really good takeaways, is the idea that it is a template, but the chances of everyone having exactly the same 11 players is still minimal. So, look, we're not saying this is the most fun way to play. It's a tactical game. And Tien is someone who I've talked about. He is like a meta player of the game and a meta thinker of the game. And do you want those 6 or 7 template picks? No, not always. I said earlier, I don't want Saka. Like, my heart doesn't desire him. But it's a tactical move. This is a game of strategy. And you don't need 11 different players to be successful, right? You just hope some of the ones that give you the edge are going to get you those extra points. So, for example, I have Diaby. He's a good old differential, but I've got shield picks like Saka as well. So it's not, people will sit there and say, oh, that's a terrible way to play, but it's a strategy, right? Everyone plays differently. If you want to go full gung-ho, you refuse to have anyone over 25% ownership, that's great. That's one way to play. That's very exciting. But if you're just trying to do it, like you said, about planning and strategizing and picking the right time and the right transfers, that's what's going to happen. Something that I'm trying to do less this year and look more into is I feel as though we waste a lot of transfers. We immediately see like a Sterling with a 19-point haul. I'm not saying Sterling's a bad pick. I've said he's looked great against Liverpool. He looked good. He looked good in parts against Liverpool. Excellent against West Ham. Fantastic against Luton. But people will just go there. I try to do now with my free transfers is I always say I've got to look at 4 game weeks. It's a minimum. Like if I'm bringing a guy in, I can't bring him in for 2 game weeks and sell him, right? Unless
all season you said 8. Rob, all season you've said 8.
No, that's for the wild card. For the wild card. For the wild card, not the transfer. The transfer is if I bring a player in, but the first question, I think Lucy made a fantastic point, is who do you want to sell? Don't just look at who you want to buy. You need to also, versus whoever you bring in, any of those positions that you're going to take out. So my argument about keeping Rashford is he's going to play Partey at right back against Arsenal, and then he's going to play Brighton, who have no right back and have the third worst expected goals conceded in the Premier League. So if whoever you're going to bring in for Rashford has got to beat Rashford in those games for the next few weeks. I feel as though we look at, I'm going to jump on Maddison. He's got a couple of good fixtures. He looks really good. Boom, done. I've done it. Like, I would just suggest to just take a breath and don't just say he looks good. You need to tell yourself he's better than the guy that you're taking out. And I've been guilty for years of not doing that, of just thinking, I like Maddison. He's better than Matoma. I'm going to make the move. But instead, I'm trying to be smarter about my moves and say, well, okay, Matoma's about to come up against Trippier. That is a difficult game. Newcastle, without Botman, they are a good, strong defensive side with a fantastic midfield. I don't think Matoma is going to get too much joy in that game. Maddison is going to play a newly promoted side and is the key, and they're attacking really well. So for me, that's the move in 1 week. But that's just 1 week. You've got to look at several game weeks, not just this looks great. So I'll compare not just to one player. I might compare it to Rashford as well. I might make that move because long-term it might work out. But you need to, I feel as though we throw away our free transfers and therefore we take away our opportunity to get ahead of the template because we make rash decisions with our most important decision of the week, which is the free transfer, unless you want to take hits. So if you are going to take out Matoma like I am, compare whoever you're going to bring in, but compare it for like a minimum of 4 weeks. But also specifically, who is Matoma going to play against? What team is he going to be against? Who's going to be marking him? What formation are they going to play? And compare exactly that to the player that you're going to bring in. So if you're going to bring in Sterling, he goes on the wing, he cuts inside, and he takes 99% of his shots from the edge of the 6-yard box. If you're against a team that sits deep or plays 5 at the back, he's not going to get as much joy there. But if you're against, so I've already said I've got Diaby in. I'm arguably the most excited about him playing this week against Liverpool than I have with him against any other team I've had him in since. Because Liverpool's going to play the high line. Now they don't have Van Dijk. I'm gutted because I thought he was going to have Van Dijk on toast. He's going to be absolutely, he'll go beyond Watkins. He'll be behind that Liverpool defense. And Trent's not going to be able to stop him. But I did that before I even brought Diaby in. So just my suggestion for the template side is be more thorough with your free transfers, because then you'll find that you won't have to waste it in 3 or 4 weeks because you made that rash decision. So if you're bringing in Maddison, he's going to play Arsenal. So if you don't agree with me about how I feel about Arsenal and you think Arsenal are going to suddenly play Partey and Rice in the middle and be all strong defensively, Maddison's probably not going to get a lot of joy in that game. So you need to compare and make your own points predictions. And please don't sit there and listen to an AI model tell you your team is 97%, because you can look at data, you can look at games, but that's not how it works. Lucian, how do you think we can attack the template?
Okay. A lot of my points here have been already mentioned by our dearest experts here. So I am going to basically stack meta on top of meta. So bear with me if the terms are a little bit too complex. Okay. So what Tian has already mentioned, right, is basically trying to be ahead of the template. You have first mover advantage, and your advantage lasts like that 1 to 2 weeks. So a very easy example would be owning Jackson for game weeks 1 and 2 before his fixtures turn good in game weeks 3. Easy. Okay, next. The flip side version of that. Instead of buying early, you can sell late. So level 2, right? You level it on top of that. Everyone's going to be selling Brighton players. Joao Pedro, easy sell. Mitoma, maybe not, maybe not. So if you feel that you can go against the grain by acting early, you can also go against the grain by delaying your moves. Be that fox in the box striker where don't run together with the defenders. You anticipate when the defenders will run and you wait for the ball to arrive to you, just like Diaby did against I forgot which team it was. Okay, so that's one part of it. Now, the second level of beating the template, not just relying on low probability things like identifying a genuinely good player because you've played FM for too many hours. Sorry, Rob. And beyond that low probability strategy thing. I mean, who on earth can unearth Gustavo Hammer, right? That's amazing. What an amazing pick. So yes, second level is to identify weaknesses in the current template. That is very, very important. Not just in terms of fixtures, not just in terms of ability, just in terms of the mentality of people who own the template. As Tian said, the template is popular, it is not necessarily good. People only form the template because that player performed well for like a stretch of games. Fine. Reece James, very good example. But the moment Reece James started performing crap, people hold on to the memories of Reece James doing well. And that is when you act ruthless and go, Almiron is a sell now. Reece James is a sell now. And you have to cut the cord before, everyone else. So that is a genuine attack on the template because of course it is semi-risky because players do revive after going through a bad patch. A very good example was Gabriel Martinelli last season itself, right? He performed well, everyone jumped on him, his price went from 6.0 to like 7. And then I sold him at 7 because I knew that Bukayo Saka was coming into form. Martinelli definitely ticked off, but he came back. And Martinelli had this stretch, right, when Trossard was centre forward instead of Nketiah, and Martinelli was just banging the goals in, and I suffered huge because the template didn't move. I did, and I suffered. So that is the downside of that kind of strategy, identify weaknesses in the current template. However, I would remind everybody at this early stage of the season when literally no team is settled, just react to form. Just react to form and minimize the amount of damage you do to yourself. And that should at least keep you in pace and, stay with the template, stay active.
Yeah, I really like that the point about you moved but the template didn't. And that gets worse as the season goes on and people become less interested but were template, and you end up getting beaten by teams that haven't made moves in 5 to 10 game weeks. Like, I tried to jump off a lot of people jumped off Martinelli. Was it after the World Cup when we had that wild card? And then that's when he went on that hot streak, right? So I think that's a really profound point about, you jump off the template, but be careful because maybe most people still don't. So it's always a risk, but you're not going to win FPL if you follow it all the time, right? Where it is. Ryan, any points you want to say about attacking the template?
So I think most of it has been said, but I guess this is where I even did when I was having the discussion with Mira in terms of trying to in terms of forecasting, looking at good teams with about good swings about to come. And the idea was not only to you're not chasing points, but you're also looking at teams like Liverpool, Villa. They're about to have good fixtures. It's not yet, but it's coming. So you don't want to kind of lock yourself out as well from possible players from there. So that's where I guess I tie into Lucian's point. Maybe you can go a week early. Now, Tian mentioned Rich James 2 seasons ago. I also got that. I wildcarded Game Week 9, got James in. Huge red arrow because no one performed. Next game week, the entire wildcard team performs. 2000 game week rank, and I'm in the top 20k end of the season. But those are a bit of variances, luck, and everything. But you've also done your research because you've got in a bit earlier before they became template players. And if you get lucky, then yeah, good. But you've kind of identified that these guys are going to have a good fixture upcoming or good fixture run. I feel confident about this player, so I'm going to go on them and see how that happens. It's always better to be either early or late than just going with the crowd. If you're going to play safe, you're not going to win FPL, unfortunately. You have to take a bit of risk, especially to get into that top 10k. If everyone wants to get top 10k, at this point, top 10k, you need to take a bit of risk or you need to get lucky to get in the top 10k. But if you play smart and do sensible moves, then you can get into that top 100k. That's possible. But you shouldn't be chasing points. You should be, again, reacting to form, fixtures, all of that dictates how you break the template. The other thing I would say is there's still changes in the template. We may see like a lot of people having Madison, a lot of people having Sterling, a lot of people having 2 Arsenal mids, 2 United mids. That's already more than 5 midfield slots. Then you got the likes of Diaby, Eze, you got the likes of Foden, Mbeumo. We're reaching about 10 to, we have about 10 or 12 good midfielders performing. And you having any of those 5 midfielders is already a differential in terms of a combination. So again, this goes back to Tian mentioning, you have like 2 or 3 players that are different, and that can be in your midfield, where some have Sterling, you don't have Sterling. That's fine. You maybe have a Foden who's different to Sterling. So that's where you kind of make your gains and your losses, I guess. But yeah, that's basically how I would probably look at it.
I think it was Live FPL, but I can't remember which website it was where you could put in like
Live FPL, the combination.
Yeah, and I think
Yes.
that's a really good tool to try and calm people down if they feel like it's a bit too template. So Sterling, super popular this week. Madison, super popular, right? But if you go on that website and you type Sterling plus Madison, how many people have both of these players? It's not as many as you think. And there's a Twitter bubble, there's a YouTube, and there's a content bubble. Like Madison, I think he's still under 20%, right? He's like 19 point something percent. So that's still a big, good scorer for your side if you bring him in. But you get that stubbornness, right? Where it's like, well, I don't want to bring him in now. Everyone else has got him. I don't want him, right? And it is. There's people like, well, I'm not going to make that move because all those content creators are going to make that move. But sometimes it's just the move to make. And it's points at the end of the day, right? You want points. They are good players, but they are still low enough owned. I think is Sterling just like 12%?
13 or something.
Sterling is exactly 13%, and Madison is 19.6. So if you've just got one of those 2 players, you've got a player that if they do well, you're going to get a lovely big green arrow in that area from them. And if you've got both of them, well, that's even better because that is not highly owned at all to have both of them, right? So I like that, and you guys are good examples of when you've gone early, following your gut, but having that patience. You made the call, and it was the right call, right? And that's something that we as a group have said before. And when we do our 4-week player picks, it's not all about, okay, my player got 30 points over 4 weeks, I'm really good, right? It's about the process and thinking, was that the right move? Did I get lucky? And how can I replicate that and do that elsewhere in my FPL strategies, right?
I should add also not to react to one game week sample as well in terms of if your player doesn't perform. Like let's say I bought Mbeumo in game week 3. He was playing a Crystal Palace team. They're already really good defensively. We have seen the data on this. Doesn't mean that he was a bad pick. They still have Bournemouth to come and like a few good fixtures. Still could do well. So don't always, my pick was bad.
Yeah.
He didn't perform in the first week that I bought him. No, with some time as well.
And that's why I said look at 4. But yeah, Tian, you wanted to add on, yeah?
Yeah, no, just quickly add a point there. I think, all you said are really good points. But, if you're on Twitter, if you watch a lot of content, you know that there's a lot of FOMO, right? Fear of missing out, like because there's just so many good picks and you can only fit so many in your teams, and you only have like 1 free transfer a week. So it's very important to not have that sort of knee-jerk reaction. I have it all the time. Like after watching a game, I was like, I hate that guy. I want to get him out of my team straight away. But you gotta stop that. You gotta just leave it. A day or 2, you come back and then you go through that process. Like, why did I get him in the first place? Okay, he didn't perform this game week, but is he going to perform in the next few? Are there go back to the reason why you got that player in the first place. And similarly, you don't react with a very positive performance as well. So I think after game week 2, Brighton did really well, right? So they got 2 easy fixtures, and literally all of their picks did really well. And so most of the Brighton players were the most transferred in, ahead of Game Week 3. So I put out a tweet then and say, well, yes, it's understandable that everyone is in love with Brighton, but and a lot of people didn't go with full on with Brighton, right? I didn't have Mitoma, I only have two. I think you didn't have Estupiñán, right? So you kind of like, okay, well, I may have made a mistake, but the way to correct that mistake wasn't to get Brighton players. The way to correct that mistake was to find players in good teams that were about to get the easy fixtures like Brighton did.
The next Brighton, yeah.
The next Brighton, which was Chelsea, which Spurs. So that was exactly why I was like, well, I didn't panic because I didn't have Mitoma. Okay, well, the points are gone. They're gone. There's no point trying to chase the points that are gone. So that was exactly why I got like Sterling instead, or Foden, or Madison, or whoever that is. But you try to predict that new players that will emerge, because mostly it's the fixtures, right? You got good fixtures, and then you identify a good players that may be about to hit form. That will be the perfect combination, right? Player hitting form and about to have a good run of fixtures. Now, sometimes you do correct the mistake by getting the players that you didn't get in the first place, if you think that they will continue, right? Because if the fixtures are still good, the team is looking good, then of course you correct the mistake. But it's not always the case that you go and get the player that, I should have got him in the first place. 2 weeks ago I should have got Mitoma. 2 weeks ago I should have got, whoever that was. You just need to ask yourself, like, is that going to continue, or should I go elsewhere? And I think that's a very important question you ask yourself every single time.
Yeah, and that's what I was saying about not wasting the free transfer, and what you just said about like Umbuemo blanking against Palace. Like, you didn't just do it for that one game, you analysed it, and yep, that one was more difficult, but I've got him against Bournemouth. And then it's Newcastle. I knew that was going to happen. He's going to attack that side, but then he's got Everton, right? It's about, you brought that player in for a reason, and that's why I'm saying the whole thing about don't waste your free transfer then. If you've planned it for 4 or 5 game weeks, look all of those 5 games, exactly who they're going to play against, what players are going to match up. And this is going to sound really stupid, but sometimes I think we forget the professional football players. You've got 11 players on a pitch, and if it's an attacking player, right, midfielder or forward, they're a professional player. They have skills. So if you're forced to keep Mitoma for a week, or whoever, Martinelli, whoever, they're really, really good at football. So there's every chance. There's no point in taking a -4 to get them out, because they're really good, right? It's that simple. You don't have to always rush. Lucian was saying, like, don't necessarily sell people early. You can sell them later. They're really good at football. They play in the Premier League. You have them in your team for some reason, and at any point, at any time, any of your players can score or assist or get points, because they're professional footballers. So unless it's Kai Havertz, and talk about that different time.
Or Richarlison.
But yeah, I'm just going to shoot through, because we're already a little bit longer, because the hot topics was great, but a little bit longer. I'm just going to shoot through interesting facts. Mine is target Fulham. Now, I know he's right here on the screen. There's a Polinia-shaped hole in this team that people are going to pick out. I completely understand, but he's one man, and with the stats and things I'm just going to quickly go over, he's not going to solve all these problems, right? For me, the first whipping boys, the one team that you should be targeting so far this season is Fulham. If you're not just going to say, let's all go for Luton because they're all small or whatever, it's Fulham. It's worse than you think. Yes, they've got Polinia. He could be off to Bayern Munich. They've just put an 80 million price tag on him. Who knows? But even if he's in this side, he's not going to stop all these problems for Fulham. We said, me and Lucian in pre-season when we did all the teams, I said about Leno had so many chances and he did so well with points because he had to do so much to save it. And it was why I considered started the season with him and Pickford, which I didn't, because their defense is so bad. They're one of the few Premier League defenses in FPL where the entire defense plays all the games, all the minutes, and they still don't get 100 points. Their defense is really bad. I'm a Bolton Wanderers fan. I've seen a lot of Tim Ream in my time. He is not a Premier League footballer anymore. And Well, he's suspended, isn't he? He had a red card. So a lot of people mentioned the previous game week how bad Fulham's expected goals conceded was, but it's much worse than that because even though they're bottom, they're overachieving in regards to their delta. They've conceded 5 goals, which is bad already, but they should have conceded just under 10 because they're minus 4.85. So they should have conceded like 10 goals. So if you're a believer as well in like stats, evening themselves out with like things like variance, Fulham should end up conceding even more goals. Spurs are second with a delta of minus 2.95. So Fulham are almost double overachieving in how many that they've conceded. And that's way beyond any other Premier League side. But it's not just like all the expected stats. They're third for how often they're expected to concede a chance on target. They're only behind Luton and Burnley, who have played Manchester City and Chelsea. They're top for expected goals conceded from open play. They're top from expected goals conceded from set plays. They are second for attempts conceded inside the box, just behind Sheffield United with 45. Sheffield United have 46. First for shots conceded on target. Second for headed attempts. First for attempts in general. First for attempts conceded from set plays. And first for big chances conceded. That's really bad. It is not just the fact that you've got all the expected goals conceded and all the expected stats, they're the worst. But in terms of actual stats, they are the worst. And it's every way you can concede a goal. It's not just like, oh, they're really bad at set pieces. Oh, they always give away penalties. Oh, everything. Attempts in the box, the worst. Headed attempts in the air, the worst. Free kicks, corners, set pieces, the worst. Like, they are absolutely, for me, the team to target right now. And Palhinha stays or goes, whatever, but defensively, you can attack this side. And their attack, no Mitrovic, no party. Like, that, for me, is if you've got a defender, you play him against Fulham. You've got a forward, you play him against Fulham. Like, it is even to the extent that it's unlucky Man City are playing Fulham because I would be very tempted to captain a player who's got Fulham. And it just so happens to be Erling Haaland who's going to be against this Fulham side this week. So that's mainly the reason I'm going for him as captain as well, because it's not just Haaland. He is against the team that concedes everywhere from every kind of opportunity, expected or realized stats. From any way you can concede a goal, they are pish. If we're going to get some Scottish slang in there. I know Palhinha's fantastic, but he's not going to stop overachieving in terms of how many goals have conceded. He's a wonderful player. I've no idea why Chelsea didn't go out and get him instead of Caicedo. He's an incredible player. If Manchester United didn't go for Mount and they were sat there with Casemiro, Palhinha, and Bruno Fernandes in front of them, how good is that? How good is that for a team? Even Declan Rice at Arsenal, if they didn't go for Declan Rice, it should have been Palhinha. He's a magnificent player, one of the best ball-winning defensive midfielders, and I've really been into him because at the start of FIFA this year, he was an absolute tentacle. He was an octopus on FIFA 23. His first inform, I was one of the very few people who did his SPC on FIFA 23, and people hated me because he is so strong. His legs are so long. He is incredible, but he is not God, and he cannot stop this Fulham side being bad. And I can't believe he's still at Fulham. With the crazy window we've just had, why has no one gone for this man? It's astounding. He's incredible, but not even Palhinha himself can stop how bad this Fulham side is. So that's my fact or find of the week. And I also did a Twitter thread. It's pretty similar to this. Tien. I know you guys will all jump and say, oh, you can target Luton. Of course, target Luton, target Sheffield United, whatever. But these guys are 12th in the Premier League table. They look good. They've beat Everton. They've just drawn with Arsenal. It looks really, really good, but it really isn't. It's really, really not. Like, Everton should have beaten them. Arsenal should have beaten them, but they didn't. Tien, what was your fact or find of the week?
Yeah, so just to set a quick facts, just to carry on what is just spoke about Fulham. Man City had 30 goal attempts against Sheffield United, so that was first for game week 3. They created 5 big chances, but they missed 4 of them, including the pen. So obviously, we only saw that they just barely beaten Sheffield United two goals to one, right? But it was amazing that they only got 2 goals. So given what you've just said about Fulham, I really strongly suggest anyone thinking about or potentially thinking about not captaining Haaland to think again, because that's suicidal in my opinion. Anyway, the second set of there's many other weeks to do that, not this week. So in the Brighton West Ham game, West Ham only had 22% of possession, yet they created 6 big chances, which was the highest in the game week. They scored 3 goals, obviously, with a non-penalty XG of 3.323, which is also the highest for the game week. They had a massive 66.7% of their chances created from the left, compared to a mere 11.1% on the right and 22.2% in the center. So obviously it seemed like Moyes had the perfect setup to neutralize Brighton by sitting deep and just simply targeting Brighton's right-hand side when Milner was the right back. And Antonio had a perfect game. His work rate helped the team, and obviously the speed of Benrahma as well when he came on really helped exploiting that right hand side of Brighton. So yeah, it's probably one of the most unexpected game of football. I would have thought in terms of stats, possession wise, and the attacking stats. That's all I got.
Yeah, I think I saw somewhere they were like the biggest counter punchers in the Premier League in terms of like possession to chances and goals and stuff. So just sit back and counter. And it's worked. It worked a treat. Lucian, your fact or finds or something interesting you found for the game week or game weeks?
I found a lot of isolated things that worked or didn't work that I do believe needs time to develop to turn into an actual interesting fact or find. The biggest pattern of play, or at least the biggest pattern across this week's matches for me, has been the influence of referees on games, especially with red cards and the timing of red cards and potential red cards. The biggest sour for me was the Newcastle Liverpool game, where Trent could have easily been sent off or not. Van Dijk maybe should not even have been sent off. I mean, all these judgment calls are really ruining the game. I mean, not from a neutral's perspective, of course, but more of in terms of reliability and predictability. Because I just find, right, that when you have referees taking over the game, I don't know how to read it, because it used to be a thing where refereeing decisions always favored home teams. And now we're starting to see this pattern where flow of the game is prioritized because they have to let VAR react to simple decisions first. And now they've implemented this new rule, right? Where if you kick the ball away from somebody to delay play, you get a yellow card there. And I think a lot of red cards that we've seen are actually double yellows as a result of all of this building up. I don't quite like it because it forces teams to whip out their so-called 10-man strategy, and that is not good for FPL. That is not good for FPL at all. I mean, as much as I'd like to sing the praises of Salah's creativity or Fulham conceding a lot of goals, 11 or 10 men or one man down or something like that. Yeah, a lot of it has to do with game state and refereeing state at the moment, and I'm just not. I'm a bit shaky. I'm a bit shaky to even just predict. Like I'd rather spend some time monitoring referees rather than team setups and team news right now, just because of how shaky everything is in terms of where the line is, in terms of offsides and yellow cards and fouls and things like that. So that's what I look forward to this week.
And it massively changes it, because if we've got extended games by like 5-10 minutes at the end of the first half, 5-10 minutes at the end of the second half, and your player's on a yellow card, and that's going to change tactics, it's going to change substitutions. And when we talk about some games later, substitutions have been pivotal with ones that players have made, managers have made this week. Ryan?
Well,
interesting
no, nothing really interesting, but I will add to Lucian's one. I think we've had 9 red cards or something so far in the Premier League. Last season, I think we had only like 32 or something. We are well on course to beat that if at the rate that yellow cards have been distributed. As well, for like, I think fullbacks are probably going to be the ones who are most affected by this, because they're the ones who take the throw-ins. And if we take too long in a throw-in, we've seen a couple fullbacks already getting yellows, and then they make a tackle, and then it's a red, and then bye-bye. So we might want to keep an eye out for that as well to see. Because I have noticed a few games where the fullback just gets a yellow for taking too long.
And goalkeepers on goal kicks. You guys on a clean sheet, probably on bonus, your goalkeeper, and then he gets the yellow card for time wasting, and he's probably just lost you 4 points.
Yeah,
a really good point. That
So I think we'll probably have to keep an eye and see how this affects FPL as well.
Yeah. I find that the start of the season, it was like at the start of the World Cup, right, when they made the time. I think it just takes a little bit time to tweak, and I think they'll calm down a little bit. But yeah, that many red cards already. That's a really interesting point. People on throw-ins, and I just said like goalkeepers on goal kicks when they're winning. It's the 90th minute, and they, when they look at the studs and just clean the mud off the bottom.
Already the yellow card waiting.
And you've just lost potentially 4 points because a yellow card -1, -3 bonus. Excellent points. So I want to try and rush us. We're already a couple of hours in, but we have the matchups now, and the first one is Chelsea and Forest. We've talked a lot about Chelsea and a bit about Forest, just key points from everyone today. But Lucian, you always take the lead on these ones. Chelsea Forest.
Yeah, let's do it. I mean, we've talked a lot about Chelsea already, so there's really not much more to elaborate, right? The influence is somehow spread out between the front four of Chilwell, Jackson, Sterling, and Enzo Fernandez, yes. So now really the focus is on Forest, right? Because we know so far that Forest have had 2 difficult games away from home. One against Man United, one against Arsenal. So we are trying to look for Forest's weaknesses across the 2 games. And this is where I pose the question to each of the 3 of you here. First and foremost, the fullbacks. A lot of people are trying to attack Forest's left, hoping that something will happen there because all of Chelsea's attacking play are going down the right. Unfortunately, United exposed Forest's weaknesses on the right, where Serge Aurier is, old and a bit rusty. Yeah. So the question is, will there be a left-sided dribbler taking advantage of that? Or will their central midfield play a much, much larger part? Because Forest have not settled on the central midfield. They couldn't play Yates, Mangala, whoever it is. It just does not make sense. And the central midfield basically capitulated against Arsenal as well as Man United. Like, Bruno Fernandes had so much time between the lines, between the defensive 3 and the midfield 2, that United forced Nottingham Forest's Worrell into a double yellow. And Arsenal basically did the same thing before Forest were allowed to come back. And so, yes, gentlemen, I'd like to pose you guys the question. Which of these weaknesses do you feel will Chelsea expose first?
I believe that they will be fine defensively and they'll take them down the middle. Release the beast, Enzo Fernandez. I think it's down the middle. What I have for mine is my question, and a lot of people's questions, is going to be Sterling or Maddison or Foden. And I already said earlier, I look at like 3 or 4 game weeks and I compare Mitoma, who I have, to who I want to take out. And it was Nottingham Forest, which a lot of people will be like, I want to bring Sterling in right now because he's got Nottingham Forest. That was a negative for me because I think Forest are better defensively than what we think they are. That's why I said about maybe getting through the midfield. I think that's correct. But they're posting good numbers. I said earlier, Arsenal had no big chances against Nottingham Forest. Second fewest attempts in a Nottingham Forest box in the Premier League, which is really good. 7th best for expected goals conceded, but 5th worst for XG. So when you're saying about people bringing in Chelsea players, I think this is going to be Chilwell's game, because you said about that side, right? I think it's Chilwell who's going to be more important in this game than Sterling, because Chilwell is going to have Serge Aurier down that side, right? So I think if there's going to be a way in, it's going to be with the left side and Sterling's on the right. And that was one of the key reasons. Forest have good defensive numbers, don't let a lot of opportunities happen in the box. But if there's a weakness, it's good for Chilwell and it's good for central midfielders. What I think.
I think it'll be Chelsea still attacking via their right. But I do agree with Chilwell possibly, because he could be on the end of that attacks in terms of crosses from the right going into, because Forest is still weak. I will say though, you did mention with regards to United exposing Forest's right flank. I would counter that with saying that United attack just generally starts from there as well. We're generally good with Bruno because it's Bruno Fernandes on that side. So it's always going to be occupied by that. And he's going to be the one who starts the attack, I would say, because right now Rashford is still not yet in proper form. So that's why I would state that happened. But I think from watching Chelsea, they seem to give the ball to Sterling or Gusto or even Reece James when he was fit on that right. And then it moves into the center. So I think maybe Jackson and Chilwell both could end up on the end of chances. But the attack, I feel, might start from Sterling or Gusto.
Yeah, Tien?
Yeah, I mean, I have Sterling, so of course I've got to talk him up. No, but genuinely, I think the way Chelsea set up is that even if it might start on the left with Chilwell, and Chilwell, might pass it to Jackson, but what Jackson normally does is, he sort of he hold the ball, and what he does next is he pass to Sterling. And when he passed the ball to Sterling, Sterling doesn't pass back to him. Sterling would dribble through 2 or 3, and then he tried to shoot. That's what I like. I mean, obviously, you could argue that Maddison is great because he's the central of everything Spurs do, right? He doesn't go right into the box. He doesn't take the shot in the 6-yard box. He may take a shot from outside the box. He may obviously try to assist his teammates, but Sterling, and he's already been given the green light by Poch to say, yep, go for your life. So he's already set his, I don't know, goal target or whatever it is. So I can see that it's going to continue. So whatever Chelsea do, a lot of the ball is going to flow either from the right, and Sterling will just take it, go in, or if it's from the left, probably look to pass it to the right a lot of the time. Look at what Chilwell did. He was in front of goal. He could have taken the shot. And guess what happened? Try to pass to Sterling. He tried to pass it to Sterling. So
I'm happy I
obviously,
didn't watch that game live.
I don't think you can ignore the fact that it seems like everything is flowing to Sterling.
Yeah.
That's why I'm very hard on him.
That was a Jackson assist as well. It literally cost me like 10 points or something. Like
Plus bonus.
Oh man, like what is he doing? He looks at it as well. Like it's not a blind pass. He looks at the goalkeeper, he looks at the goal, and then he just doesn't shoot. What's he doing? That's why Maddison had a joke with him. Just before we move on, is there any more points that you want to mention, Lucian? Because I didn't want to skip any of the notes that you.
Oh, well, sorry, I was already looking at the Brighton Newcastle page. So, yeah, for Chelsea against Forest as a matchup, I think right now it's just more trying to answer whether Chelsea will also counter press Nottingham Forest, especially since they're at home. I think that's something we have to consider because Chelsea did exceptionally well on the counter press previous match against Luton. So will they build on that is another issue because we want to talk about generating chances via the left, right? Chelsea did it against Luton really well because Luton's were weak on the right side. They gave the ball a lot away on the right side, and so Chilwell and Jackson actually pressed them down on that flank to create their own shots before Sterling's brilliant brace. But here, yeah, I mean the same might happen again for Forest. You never know, especially since Worrell is suspended.
And that's why I'm thinking about Chilwell. I can see it now. I can see Serge Aurier doing something silly down that right-hand side or getting caught out of position, and Chilwell's going to go down and put it into Jackson.
And pass it to Sterling.
Who then passes it to Sterling, who then never passes to anyone and does everything perfect.
One thing to add is, I guess Tien will be happy as a Sterling owner, is that he's not going for England. He hasn't been called up for the England squad, so you won't have to worry about hopefully no injuries for him during the international break, I guess.
It is Maguire
Yeah, he's been called up. Don't worry.
Oh my god! What? He doesn't even play for. All right, we'll move on because
move on.
Oh my god! It's fine for you guys, not English. I gotta put up with that. All right, so let's go on to Brighton Newcastle. Ken, you want to lead us then? Brighton Newcastle, good teams. Nice to watch. Yeah, Lucian. Sorry.
Go, Lucian.
All right, let's go. So, Brighton against Newcastle is going to be a straightforward decision, or at least in terms of what you guys are going to make the call on. Because on one hand, Newcastle have thrived based on zones. Their left side is absolutely sparkling right now, whether Anthony Gordon plays or whether Harvey Barnes does the job. And they destroyed Liverpool. They tried against Man City, but they absolutely smashed Aston Villa. So definitely, without question, Newcastle will attack Brighton hard, press them really fast, similar to Wolves did. And so the question, right, first and foremost, is whether you feel that the situation where Brighton beats Newcastle individually, man for man, or do you think Newcastle will press Brighton down? That's the first thing to address. Secondly, physicality. We all know that Brighton have that weakness down that right-hand side, and I won't elaborate on that. But the truth here is that Brighton's centre-backs were bullied off the ball. Even though Antonio worked down that left-hand side, his individual duels that he won were actually against Dunk and Webster, centre-backs that pulled out to the right side. So the question is, do you think Isak will do the job against Brighton's centre-backs, or do you feel that it's the flanks and the sheer pace and intensity of their counter press that will win them the game, or whether Brighton will just break through that intensity? Because Wolves tried the same strategy and Mitoma skipped past Semedo as well as two Wolves midfielders to score the opener. Go.
So I think first about Brighton, we've already talked about the right-hand side and third worst for expected goals conceded. I think it's a really interesting point about Isak. You know, Antonio can bully a lot of defenders. He's very fast. He's very strong. I think Isak is quality-wise a lot better, and he's also fast and strong. I don't see clean sheets here because they're sparkling. You said down the left, but I mentioned earlier Trippier is going to be there. That's going to be difficult. March is going to get the joy because Burns likely going to go into the middle, and Target will go at left back and get targeted by March. But it's going to be the battle of the left wingers, the battle of the left sides, because you're going to have, if Gordon has kept his place, I think he's done enough to do so. He's going to be fighting down a non-existent right back for Brighton. And then on the other side, for Brighton, they're going to be going forward with March to attack the left back of Newcastle. So I think it's going to be a battle of the wing backs in this one. But just a point I want to mention about subs. I've mentioned substitutions earlier and how they've changed the game. And I even tweeted out about this during the game about how bad Newcastle were, how disappointing they were against Liverpool. They were up by 70 minutes a man. And I said on this show last week that it was going to be the battle of the midfielders. So is Liverpool going to be able to stop Newcastle steamrolling them through the middle? Because they still don't have a good six, right? And they were in it and they were winning, and he took off what was it? It was Tonali, it was I think Isaac, but the subs and then the switch to not going down the middle anymore cost Liverpool, because then Liverpool just went down the middle. I've said earlier about why Salah is not as good as an asset this season, because he keeps getting pushed out to the wing. You know, when I said about Trent going inside, or if other players, like if Gakpo drops more central, Salah goes out wide, so he's not as much as an asset. Newcastle gave up the middle with the subs that they made, and that put Salah into the middle. And that, if you're a Salah owner, that's exactly where you want him. That's exactly where you want him, because then he just shoots in or passes straight down the middle, and it happened twice. Newcastle against 10 men, if they want to be in the Champions League, they can't not put these games to bed. If that was any other team in the top 4, they'd have picked Liverpool apart. Even with 11 men, they've been picking them apart. Eddie Howe cost Newcastle that game because of the subs he made. Gordon going off, he had a blinder, but he was tired. And I saw someone tweeting who was at the game, they said off camera and stuff, like he had cramp or he looked a bit tired. I'm not against that, but they've got such a good, powerful midfield. And maybe it connects to the points that you guys said earlier about the referees. I'm not too sure if Tonali had a yellow card or not, but he didn't have a yellow card, so maybe he's just not match fit. I don't know. I can't explain why that's happened. Hopefully they're going to learn from that. And when you're saying about them bullying him down the middle, it's going to be a battle for the weakness of Brighton's right side and Newcastle's left side. But I still think that Newcastle can steamroll a lot of teams down the middle. But I hope Eddie Howe is a much smarter football person than I am. He must be sitting there and understanding that those substitutions and that switch to the sides cost him that game. I don't get it. I don't get why. So yeah. Ryan, you want to point any?
Well, I think obviously the right back situation for Brighton we mentioned. I think Gordon should do fine. He had Trent on toast. And I think he will do well again this game week as well. The midfield you mentioned, I didn't really watch the game because it was too late, but it seems like Tonali lost position quite a lot in midfield from based on just looking at the stats. But I'm not sure about that. But like Joe Linton also removing, I agree. I guess removing your core midfield all the way and just bringing in like Longstaff and Anderson probably is not the best option. I think it's safe to say Newcastle kind of bottled that game, probably from being like a man advantage as well. But I think the Brighton game, there is the possibility that Burns still stays like left back and Lewis Hall possibly comes as well. That's a possibility that we might have to consider, but I don't know. We'll have to wait and see once we see the team news. But yeah, I think Gordon should be good. Again, Mitoma and Estupinan might have some luck, and if you have March, play him and see how it goes, I guess.
Tien, any points you want to add on, or I swing it back to Lucian?
Yeah, I don't think I have anything to add on the game itself. But in terms of FPL assets, like we've already touched on Brighton earlier, right? I think most of them sell if you have spare free transfers to jump on the next opportunities. But I think we also agree that if you don't have any free transfers or you have to take the likes of Mitoma or Estupinan now, then probably don't do it, because they still okay to hold, and Mitoma is a quality football player. He can certainly do well. But yeah, I don't think there's any need to hit him out, for example. And Estupinan, if you got a double Chelsea defenders and a Udogie, for example, and Chilwell, obviously, then it's perfectly fine to bench Estupinan. So I think for Newcastle's, to me personally, it's probably too early to bring any of the assets in. But I'll be watching this game very, very carefully to scout their players ahead of their pretty decent fixture run from Gameweek 5.
Yeah, we talked a lot earlier about attacking the template and people wildcarding and trying to make it at the right time, and a popular move for Newcastle is next week. But I would massively argue that if I were wildcarding, I'd be looking at Isaac in a 3-4-3 potential formation, because we said earlier about leaking a lot of chances. And I wouldn't be massively surprised if this is a game that you think's going to have goals, but will end up being like 0-0 or 1-1, getting on late. And I wouldn't be surprised that at the moment it feels like it's just a 70 minutes for Isaac, 30 minutes for Wilson. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see another situation that when Newcastle were scoring goals last season, that Isaac stays on the pitch and goes a little bit wider, and Wilson goes down the middle. And they attack.
Last time they didn't have a left wing last season. This time they have a Harvey Barnes and Anthony Gordon. So
But or go to more of a 4-4-2. Have them both on the pitch. Have Isaac and Wilson to try and win the game, because they're gonna. Brighton are in their ballpark in the league, right? They were too respectful or too cowardly against Newcastle. Against Man City. They threw away a golden opportunity against Liverpool. They can't fall to Brighton here, and I can definitely see 70 minutes. It's 1-1 or they're losing 1-0. And you put Isaac and Wilson on the pitch together. Isaac goes down the left side, Brighton's weaker right side, and that's when they could get something at the end of the game. I think there's goals here, and if you are wildcard and you want to attack the game, the template, and you want to get early, I think Isaac is fine to get a week earlier, because I see him doing great here. I was early on him last season, and I think this is his kind of game. Just don't mess up the subs again. And any more points, Lucian, before we hop on to the last one, Arsenal United?
Just 3 very short ones. Brighton looked bad because they didn't play their first 11 properly. Secondly, Trippier is a weakness. It is not a strength. Trippier is only weak because Miguel Almiron does not back him up. So if Almiron does track back, then Trippier's flank is solid. He demonstrated that against Liverpool very well. And last point I need to make here is that the way Brighton will beat Newcastle will be on the transition. And there is only one player that executes transitions very well that none of us have mentioned since pre-season for Brighton.
Pascal Gross.
Pascal Gross. Yeah. So that's it.
So the big one, I would even describe it, just 2 unpredictable teams. 2 teams that just is so strange at the moment, but this is one of the most difficult ones to predict, because you don't know which Arsenal's going to come out. You don't know which Man United's going to come out. I have a feeling this is going to be a Ten Hag masterclass. But Lucian, you always kick us off on these ones. You start us off on the matchups. Manchester United, Arsenal. We're at the Emirates for this. What are you feeling? We talked a lot about Arsenal today. I've had a bit of a dig at playing Partey at right back and things like that. But how are you feeling about this game?
Well, you know how we feel about games between top 6 matches. Chelsea against Liverpool will be a tactical battle that will never be repeated again, just as Spurs against Man United, just as Man City against Newcastle. Really, you will never see these game plans executed at the same level ever again. Same thing with Man United Arsenal. Whatever Man United plan A is against Forest, that they've done well or not, they will not pull the same thing against Arsenal. Similarly, Arsenal, whether they did well against Forest in game week 1 or whether they tried to beat the barn door down against Fulham but failed to do so in game week 3, none of that will show up against Man United. Top 6 games are an absolute chaos, a Rumble Royale chaos type of match, because I mean, I think the real question I want to ask from you guys, right, is the purpose of FPL. What do you want to get out of this? Because there are 3 perspectives to this, and I feel that for us, at least as an FPL manager, we want to look for heroes from this match. Games between top 6 sides, especially this early in the season, is more of a test of character rather than a test of whether a team looks like they're going to win the league or challenge for Europe or something like that. Because there's so many more things that can happen right down the line. So, yeah, you have a game between 2 sides that have virtually no pressure upon them as of yet, because both sides have 2 wins and a draw or something like that. So yeah, when it's no holds barred, free for all, you can throw player dynamics out the window because Ten Hag's gonna do something different. I mean, as it is, playing Diogo Dalot at left back was already really awkward, right? So who knows what he's going to do next. Same thing with Arsenal. I mean, if he feels that Partey at right back doesn't work, he can easily shift the entire side and play Ben White at right back. Jakub Kiwior could come in again. Anything literally can happen. So my question for you guys is not about who will shine, because we don't care about that. We know it won't be repeated again. But what do you guys hope for? What do you guys wish for out of this game so that it gives you confidence to hold on to your Brunos, your Rashfords, your Martinellis, your Sakas, and whoever the else Kai Havertz left, I guess. you know. But yeah, that what do you guys look out for? Assuming that Gabriel Jesus comes back.
I'm only gonna say like it's without trying like sound like a cop out. When you say about like the players who you think will do well, it's gonna be the template players. I already said earlier, like Rashford is against Partey, right? Saka is against no left back. So this is gonna be one of those situations where if we can't predict it, because if Arteta, what I want Arteta to do what he's done for the first 3 games of the season, and Manchester United are going to beat them. That for me is going to happen. If Arteta does the same tactics and the whole Partey playing at right back, I did a whole thing earlier about he can be great at defensive midfielder, but right back is right back. It's like a lion talking to a zebra, right? They don't understand each other, but they're good at what they do. So I hope Arteta is stubborn enough to be like, I'm so smart, I'm so good, I'm going to still do this. And Rashford's going to nail it. I think Rashford's going to do great. And Arsenal are going to come back at them because they're at home. They want to try and challenge for the title. And you just said Dalot playing at left back. He's going to have Saka. And I said earlier about Arsenal banging the right-hand drum with Martinelli screaming on the other side, play me, pass to me, pass to me. Martinelli's an easy sell for me because he's probably going to have Wan-Bissaka, and he's one of the best defensive right-backs in the league in terms of tackling. But at times, Manchester United are really toothless. Arsenal, I went in earlier about how this new identity, but this can all be out the window if Arteta goes back to exactly what I said before, and he plays White at right back, Zinchenko at left back, and Gabriel and Saliba as the 2 centre-backs. And then put Partey and Rice as 2 defensive midfielders. It depends if Arteta's going to stick to his plan or he's going to show a little bit of respect to Manchester United and play 2 like CDMs to hold it. Manchester United are going to stick on to whatever they're doing. They're going to stick with the Casemiro in there, and Mount is still not fit, right? So it's probably still going to be Eriksen and Bruno, with Bruno a little bit more forward. I even said before last week, right, when we talked about Manchester United before the game, that Mount being out was a good thing, because that means Bruno would definitely be the player who's more advanced, because he's one of the best 10s in the game. And now that's still going to happen. So if Arteta plays what he's done this season, United, I reckon, are gonna win. And Tien, I think you were the one who pointed out, one of you, I think it was you, Tien, last week when you said about Rashford stepped up for the big games. And I think, Lucian, you pointed out that when Rashford started his run, it was against Arsenal, was it?
Liverpool.
It was against Liverpool and then Arsenal, right? Because Ten Hag, United stumble when they should win, but then in these kinds of games at the Emirates, I can see it. If Arteta doesn't go back to just that back 4 I mentioned earlier. So that's personally what I think will happen. That if Arteta goes back to it, it's going to be a horrible top 6 game of, I don't want to lose, let's keep it tight, don't give anything away. But if it's Arteta's new plan with this new structure and United's new plan and new structure, anything can happen. But I reckon that there's going to be goals. And I think that's why we're sat here with... Are we all benching United and Arsenal defenders this week?
Oh, well, I'm playing Onana because I kind of have to.
So goalkeeper, you're not going to play... Who's your backup goalkeeper?
Turner.
Right, so goalkeeper doesn't count because you just play them all the time, right? But have we all got an Arsenal defender?
Yeah.
Not anymore.
You sold yours, so you don't even have an Arsenal defender. Ryan, where's your Arsenal defender?
Saliba on the bench.
On the bench. Lucian, where's your Arsenal defender?
Yeah, on the bench, man.
Me, on the bench. And we said earlier, I don't want to blow my own horn, but I've got Palace goalkeeper who might not be the goalkeeper for much longer, and I've got Anderson as well, right? Because I planned this out. I was always going to bench it because I don't trust them to do it. But yeah, I don't think there's going to be any. If there's going to be heroes, I think it's going to be your Rashford and your Saka because that's where the weaknesses are. But I think this is just going to come down to what Arteta does. That's going to be the call here. Ryan, so we've got two Manchester United fans, so try not to be too biased against one of your old rivals.
No, I think so. For me, I think Ten Hag's team kind of unfortunately picks itself because of the injuries and everything. So he'll be forced to like pick the same team as last game week, unless he decides to maybe not pack the midfield, but add more physicality by starting McTominay instead of Eriksen. That's the only change I can see happening. The other thing is probably if for some miracle Højlund is fit, you start Højlund instead of Martial. That's the other possible change. Maybe that kind of changes the way United's attack functions, but apart from that, I think the rest kind of picks itself. Ball will go to Bruno, and it's up to Bruno to take the game by the scruff of the neck and either find Rashford or someone else. That's probably what will happen. And from an Arsenal point of view, I guess, again, like you mentioned, it depends on if Arteta goes back to what made the team tick. If he does decide to play Partey, then I think Rashford might have a field day.
Yep. I said after the first game as well, when I said the Mount thing wasn't working, if you put Casemiro and McTominay in an away game like this to a top four rival like Arsenal, put McTominay and Casemiro as your sort of sixes or more defensive midfielders. Let Bruno free. Let him take the scruff of the... Because he can't, at the minute, he can't run around like all over the place because he still has that 8 responsibility. Stick Casemiro and McTominay in there and let him chase the game. Let him grab it. Let him go with the ball and that's it. This is why it's so hard to predict because we just don't know if Ten Hag's going to be stubborn and stick with the 2 8s and the 6. We don't know if Arteta's going to be stubborn and stick with this new style that he's got. Are they going to change it? Lucian mentioned earlier about how different plans are happening for different games, and we might not see the same pattern or same team or same form every other game. It's impossible. We're not going to know until kickoff, and that's it. So it's just bench United and Arsenal defenders, and probably the attackers will do all right. Jen, what were your thoughts, Arsenal, Man United?
Yeah, so in terms of starting the season, both of we can safely say that both teams have not started the season very well. But I think Ryan is right that Ten Hag is kind of forced in terms of the team doesn't look like fully prepared and fully fit for the season, and then it got struck with like key injuries in key areas as well. And I mean we got no left back basically. You've got to play Darlow there. And now Varane is injured as well. But I think because of the game is so big, Ten Hag is not going to repeat what we did in the Nottingham Forest game. Like we're not going to concede easy. I think early goals. Well, finger crossed, because I think Ten Hag's going to put a lot of respect, and he's going to be like starting the game with the view of not conceding early. Because that once you concede early against Arsenal, it's very hard to come back. No, United have conceded a lot more chances than Arsenal, like left, right, centre, everywhere. Like we conceded a lot of chances, twice as many or more than twice as many chances as Arsenal. But in terms of big chances, Arsenal conceded 4 and United conceded 5, and Arsenal does have errors in them as well. So they already got errors leading to goal and chances, probably due to the new setup. So I think the game is gonna be moments of individual brilliance. I think both teams is gonna respect each other. I think both teams need a result. But it will take individual brilliance of Rashford or Bruno or Saka, for example, to get the goals. And I think there will be goals, But then on the other hand, I wouldn't be surprised if it's gonna be like a very low scoring game as well, uh, because of that. So yeah, I agree completely. If you got like defensive assets from both sides, if you can bench them, bench them. Attacking asset, you just play them. Don't play anyone you got because there might be goals and you never know where the goals come from. If you got double Arsenal, you can easily sell one of them, not Saka. sell the other one for Madison or Sterling. If you got double United, I think you keep Bruno and you can sell Rashford. Because in a way, I see that in the game of FPL, when you got 4 or 5 or 6 players playing in one game, obviously opposing each other, it's gonna affect the points, right? It's gonna affect the points, and if you can, get an advantage for those who have no choice but to play them, and then that's a possibility and an opportunity to get ahead. So yeah, so selling one of the two Arsenal attacks and one of the two United attack to get Sterling, Madison, or Foden is absolutely the play for this week. I wouldn't have any hesitation to do that at all. Like of course any of them could do well, and I mean we can't predict the future, right? Like we could be saying that Saka is better than Martinelli, but then Martinelli could well outscore Saka. Like anything can happen in one game. Similarly between Rashford and Bruno, it's just gonna make a decision based on information in front of you, like what you think will happen, but a lot of the time what you think won't happen. So it's just gonna make peace with that. But I think the decision to sell is an easy one.
You've got to play the odds, right? Like you're right, they take points off each other. It's going to be very, very unlikely that Saka and Ødegaard and Martinelli and Bruno and Rashford are all going to walk away with 10, 15 points, right? Unless it's
in a 6-0 draw
yeah,
or something.
That's an absolute slaughter goal fest, and I think that's it. Are we all good going on?
Onana could kill a clean sheet. Sorry.
With 6-6.
That's what I want.
35 save points because of all the attempts. Are we all going to just finish off then with the 4-week play picks?
All right, I'll quickly go first then.
Yep, you're
'cause
the
I'm on
defender.
defense, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm gonna keep it easy. All the defenders are bad, Terry bad. So I am going to nominate Kyle Walker because out of a very average bunch of City defenders, they had Akanji missing, so they couldn't do their whole complex inversion into midfield nonsense. And Kyle Walker was the most direct. He has been the most direct across 2 games now, basically bombing forward with should really underrated, and he should have a lot more credit. Linking with Foden, linking with Bernardo Silva, Rodri. He's there at the byline, crossing non-stop. And one of his cutbacks across the next 4 weeks almost certainly will find an assist waiting there. That's all. Simple as that.
Yeah, he did a great assist for the Sheffield United goal that cost me my Diaz clean sheet. And he decided to back heel it in his own penalty area. I really appreciated that. Thank you very much. Tien, this will shock a lot of people who he's going for. He's a midfielder for 4 weeks.
Fielder. So for midfielders, obviously you could close your eyes and pick one of
Yeah.
Madison, Sterling, and Foden. I don't think you can go very wrong. But I have no choice but to back my boy, Raheem Sterling. Because I picked him last week because I liked the way he looked against West Ham. Even without any returns, he looked electric, and he completely tore Luton apart and rewarded me with a mega haul. Now, obviously, we pick for the next 4, right? So the next 4 fixtures of Chelsea read Forest at home, Bournemouth away, Villa at home, and Fulham away. And Rob, you've already talked about how bad Fulham defense is early on, right? So I don't think you can ask for a better fixture run. obviously, could always argue that his underlying stats aren't as good as Madison, for example, even slightly worse than Foden, I believe. And he has definitely overperformed his XGI. But I think that's come down to the man full of confidence, and he's got the full backing of the new manager, of the new system. And as I mentioned earlier, the way Jackson often plays, he plays that hold-up role, and he always plays right into Sterling potential. So the ball almost always end up with Sterling, and Sterling doesn't give the ball back to Jackson. He goes straight to goal.
Perfect,
So
isn't it?
I'm just backing my eye test. He's already returned me a mega haul, and I'm backing him to continue to return me for the next 4 game weeks.
You like that when you've got a player that's selfish. All the cameras are messed up because I think Lucian's phone or computer has died or something. So I'm now myself and Ryan. Ryan is now Lucian, teacher FPL, and a picture is now TN. So TN, you've been me and a picture today. That's been pretty exciting. But yeah, Sterling's a fantastic pick. Of course he is. It's a real close call with Madison, and they say he's greedy, which is what you want when it's your FPL person, right? And I think we have a hat trick going on here because Ryan is on the forwards this week.
Yep. And I've gone for your boy, Jackson.
My boy Jackson. Just before you go into Jackson, I do want to do some respect for TN and something that I've said about us as a group. Like, when we don't just sit here and say, oh, Sterling's really good and Madison's really good, and then we, they do good, and we say, oh, we're so smart, we told you so. And then, did you have them? No. Like, TN said it and he backed it and he got it, right? Jackson, I said it, I've got him, he's in my team. But Jackson is a clear shout, so sorry, go on then. We have Jackson. Why Jackson, Ryan?
I lost you completely because it started like
Well, robot.
buffering
really?
on my end. Yes, but I think it was good on the stream, so I think you said something good. Take it as this.
It was really good. It was really good.
Yeah. But basically, I could have gone with like Edward as well as another one just to go different. But I've been saying fixtures are king, and Chelsea has the better fixtures. He scored 1 goal. Long may it continue. Hopefully, more to come in the next 4 game weeks. So that's what I want. So Jackson, yeah.
And it looks like Iniacho could be going to Crystal Palace. So Pedro to Edouard would have been lovely because he's the striker right now, and Palace are going to have some good fixtures. I've got Edsay as well, but Iniacho looks like he could be going to Palace, and I think that's good, right? When Elise is back, you've got Elise, you've got Edsay giving it to Iniacho. Like, that is a pretty spicy front line.
Hopefully, Roy Hodgson will use him better than Brendan Rodgers did at Leicester.
He will. He'll play him. He's not buying him to not play. And if Mateta's going as well, then there's no one else, basically. I'm the wild card this week. It's pure eye test vibes. I believe in this guy. I mentioned him earlier in the Brighton game. I said Newcastle's fixture are about to turn after Brighton, but I'm going to go with my boy Isaac. I brought him in really early last season, and he was absolutely fantastic. A problem at the minute is he's like a 70-minute man because Wilson's always there to come in, but I just feel as though he's a top quality player, and I could have chosen anyone. I could have sat here and I could have said Madison. I could have said any one of the ones that we're going with, but just to be a little bit different, they've got Brentford, Sheffield United, and Burnley in the next 4. So if we're looking at a 4-game week run, Sheffield United and Burnley, wonderful. That's amazing. Brentford, I think he can get goals there. And I've already said, like, he could be up front with Wilson as well. But Lucian brought up about bullying centre-backs. And I think Isaac has the power and the speed and the skill to do some damage from now, not just from next game week. So Isaac is going to be mine. Captain, I did a big thing about Fulham. Every week it's going to be Haaland until we genuinely have another course. We've said anything other than Haaland this week would be just too much of a big gamble. You want to be different, smart, right? If Haaland is away to Arsenal then yeah, that's maybe a week where you want to look elsewhere. But at home to Fulham, with all the stats and the things we're talking about, it's like Sheffield United. How can you argue against it? Like, is there any argument against Haaland for captain this week?
Nope.
No.
Oh, well,
there's-
there was a question from Mira in terms of just wanting to be like brave and spicy. I guess if you wanted to.
But that's it. That's my opinion. It's just not a smart gamble. It's not playing the effective ownership and do that. He is literally the best option this week. If Haaland's ownership was 100% or if it was 1%, I would be captaining Haaland this game week, regardless of protecting my rank or anything like that. Like, Fulham are the team, I believe, who we should target. He's the best striker. They're at home as well. It's not even an away. It's not even an away game. It's at Manchester City. I cannot sit here and just pretend, oh, Diaby at Liverpool. Yeah, I think he'll get in behind. He'll get some points, but I'm not going to captain it. Might have done if Haaland didn't have Fulham. Like,
Yeah.
Arsenal's got Man United, so most people have got 3 players from Manchester and Arsenal, right? You've probably got 2 Arsenal, 1 United, or 2 United, so you're not going to captain them really against each other. You're going to captain Maddison or Sterling against Nottingham Forest? Sterling's been fantastic, but Tien, would you be brave enough to captain Sterling right now?
I think the way I think about captaincy, right, is and especially when you want to go against massive effective ownership, is to not ask yourself, is the alternative pick going to do well or not? Is to ask yourself whether you think that EO captain is not going to do well. So generally ask yourself, what do you think Haaland will do at home against Fulham, the worst defensive team in the league right now? If you think he's going to blank or score like less than 5 points, then yeah, sure, go for Sterling or Maddison, because I think Sterling will do well, right? I generally think that Sterling will do well. I generally think that Maddison will do well, But do I think that they will do better than Haaland at home Fulham? No, I don't think so. The odd is very low. I mean, of course, it could happen. Anything can happen in a week, but the odds are stacking against it.
Ridiculously.
So
yeah.
This is not the week to do that. I mean, yeah, I did that in game week 2, right? I didn't captain Haaland because I believe that Salah was a better pick. So in game weeks like that, where we generally think that was that Haaland playing Newcastle. I mean, Newcastle, you would think that they are much better defensive unit, right? So you would think that Haaland potentially could blank, and he did blank. I mean, of course, he could have scored against Newcastle
or just
as well.
one goal, right? You can stomach a
but the
goal.
odds, yeah, exactly. So I think that's the key question to ask yourself. Like, if you are backing against the clear and obvious most popular captaincy option in Haaland this game week, then you've got to really genuinely believe that he's not going to do very well unless he's break his leg.
Yeah.
I don't think that's going to be the case.
It's for me, it's that simple. You captain the person who you think is going to score the most points.
Yeah.
And it's just this week. Like, I went for Haaland because I didn't really feel good about Arsenal. I think they had did they have in game week 2 Palace, right? I think Palace have a great defense, so I'll if I can't beat Haaland, I'll captain Haaland, right? But this is not the game to play around. Like, it's just not. Like, there's no other situation. There's no other fixture from what I've talked about for him today. There's no other fixture that would have taken the armband off Haaland this game week. United could have been at home to Sheffield United. Arsenal could have been at home to Luton. I still would have gone for Haaland captain in the game. That's how much I'm thinking Fulham's going to get a bit of a slap. But on that heartwarming note, I think Lucian has gone. He's had a little bit longer, but we had some more to talk about. I did enjoy it. I think the segment about attacking the game week is really interesting, and how to do the meta, or in Lucian's case, is like the meta of the meta, and some really good points. So I think it's fantastic. So thanks again, guys, for coming in this week, and thanks to anyone who's still kicking around after 2 and a bit hours. Thank you very much for listening. I might try and spend some time to cut up some pieces of this, but that's the only issue, right? It's a Thursday. This is going to be out of date by tomorrow midnight. 24 hours, this will be dead, and I don't know if I can cut anything up in time, but I appreciate you guys for joining me, and the viewers as well. Any likes and subscribes, fantastic. Shares on social media. Clip it yourself. Someone's already clipped something from this show, I think, because I saw a notification. That would be lovely if there's any talking points. Fantastic. Well, thank you very much, guys. As always,